It began like any other monsoon morning in southern India. The sky was gray, heavy, quiet. Nothing felt unusual. Then the rain started. At first people didn't notice. Drops hit rooftops, roads, leaves, normal. Then someone looked down. The water was red. Not brown, not muddy. Red. Deep crimson streaks splashed onto white walls and concrete streets. Clothes stained instantly. Children froze in place. Mothers pulled them indoors. Animals scattered. For a moment, the town stood silent, staring upward, trying to understand what they were seeing. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't dust. People touched the rain. It felt warm, sticky, real. When they tried to wash it away, the stains stayed. Phones came out, video spread, reporters arrived, and the sky kept raining red. Scientists rushed to collect samples, rooftops, gutters, puddles, rivers. Under microscopes, the rain revealed millions of microscopic red particles, floating, suspended, alive in some unknown way. They weren't dirt. They weren't pollution. They were organic. DNA tests began, and then stopped. Nothing matched. No known algae. No known fungus. No known life form. The rain returned again, and again, over several days, each time the same color. Each time the same mystery. Streets looked like shallow rivers of blood. Crops darkened. Birds avoided puddles. Cows refused to drink. Even after the rain stopped, a faint metallic scent lingered in the air, as if something unfamiliar had entered the world. Then historians spoke up. This wasn't new. Centuries earlier, records described blood rain falling from the sky. In India, Europe, Africa, always red, always terrifying, always unexplained, usually dismissed as superstition or dust storms. But this time, science was watching, and science had no answers. The sky had rained red, and whatever fell with it did not belong. By the third day, fear had replaced confusion. The rain didn't fall constantly. It came in bursts, short downpours, then silence, then red again. Each time it returned, people rushed indoors, unsure if touching it was safe, unsure if breathing near it was dangerous. Scientists worked nonstop. Under higher magnification, the red particles became clearer, perfectly round, uniform, not debris, not dust. Each drop of rain contained millions of them, suspended, identical, as if manufactured rather than formed by chance. DNA sequencing began and stalled. The genetic material behaved strangely. It reacted to stains but resisted classification. Some sequences looked familiar. Others didn't belong anywhere on the evolutionary tree. Researchers ran the tests again and again, convinced a mistake had been made. There was none. Local authorities tried to calm the public. They said there was no immediate danger, no confirmed toxins, no signs of disease. But privately, scientists were uneasy. Living things don't arrive in storms, unless they come from somewhere. Crops were tested, soil samples taken, water sources examined. Nothing was conclusively harmful, yet nothing was normal. Birds avoided rooftops after the rain. Insects vanished from affected areas. Cows refused to drink from streams stained red. And then came the detail no one could explain. The rain was localized. Nearby towns remained untouched. The clouds moved normally, yet only certain areas received the red rainfall. Weather models failed to explain how particles could concentrate so precisely over such a small region without spreading. That fact changed everything. This wasn't random. Something had entered the atmosphere and fallen exactly where it did, and the sky stayed silent. As news spread, researchers from outside India arrived. Microbiologists, astrophysicists, atmospheric scientists. Each brought a different theory. None brought answers. One possibility refused to go away. What if the particles didn't originate on Earth? Fragments of comets and meteors enter the atmosphere constantly. Most burn up, some don't. If a celestial object carried microbial life, it could disintegrate high above the clouds, releasing spores that drifted silently before falling with rain. The idea sounded extreme until the data was reviewed again. The spores survived temperatures that would kill known organisms. They resisted ultraviolet radiation. Pressure changes didn't affect them. Conditions that destroy Earth-based life barely slowed them down. That kind of resilience had only been seen in one place: space. Laboratory attempts to grow the particles failed repeatedly. No matter the environment, heat, cold, oxygen, no oxygen, nothing triggered reproduction. The spores existed in a suspended state, alive, but inactive, waiting. Waiting for what? No one knew. Skeptics pushed back. They argued that unknown terrestrial organisms could explain everything: deep ocean fungi, rare algae, life that science simply hadn't cataloged yet. But that explanation didn't address the biggest problem: transport. No storm system could lift that volume of material, carry it thousands of kilometers, and drop it so precisely without dispersing it globally. The atmosphere doesn't work that way. The sky doesn't choose locations. Yet this time it had. As the debate intensified, the rain stopped completely. The clouds moved on. The stains remained. Samples were sealed. Streets were cleaned. But the question remained. If this came from space, it meant Earth was not isolated. And if it didn't, then something was living above us, unseen, until it decided to fall. Once the rain ended, the silence felt heavier than the storm itself. Scientists expected the mystery to fade. Instead, it deepened. Samples were preserved in sealed containers. Weeks turned into months. Tests were repeated as new equipment became available. Yet the results never changed. The particles were stable, too stable. Extreme heat failed to destroy them. Freezing temperatures did nothing. Chemical solvents had little effect. Radiation barely registered a response. The spores behaved less like fragile life, and more like something designed to endure. Attention turned to history. Researchers combed through ancient texts, ship logs, monastery records, forgotten journals. Again and again, similar stories surfaced. Red rain, blood-colored storms, panic, silence, disappearance. Always brief, always localized, always dismissed. Until now. Modern instruments confirmed what earlier generations could only fear. This wasn't superstition. This wasn't imagination. Something real had fallen from the sky. Local ecosystems were monitored closely. No outbreaks, no mass illness, no visible collapse. Yet subtle changes were impossible to ignore. Soil chemistry shifted slightly. Insects avoided certain areas. Birds altered migration patterns, as if responding to something humans couldn't detect. The most disturbing question lingered quietly. If the spores were dormant, what would wake them? Scientists had no answer, no trigger, no conditions, just theories, endless theories. And then came the realization that unsettled even the calmest minds. Dormant life doesn't arrive by accident. It arrives because it survives the journey. Whatever fell with the red rain had crossed unimaginable distances, endured impossible conditions, and reached Earth intact. The rain had stopped, but whatever came with it had not left. As time passed, the story escaped the laboratories and entered public imagination. Rumors spread quietly at first, then loudly. Some believed the red rain was a warning. Others thought it was proof that humanity was not alone. Religious leaders spoke of signs. Scientists avoided cameras. Everyone felt the same unease. Something had happened that could not be undone. International agencies requested access to the samples. Some were granted permission. Others were denied. A few samples disappeared into private research facilities, never to be spoken of publicly again. Official statements became cautious, vague, carefully worded. The town of Kottayam changed. Tourists arrived hoping to see where the sky had turned red. Locals told the story again and again, each time adding details, each time lowering their voices near the end. Children grew up hearing it not as legend, but as memory. Rain was no longer comforting. Every storm carried tension. People watched the clouds, waited, listened. When clear water fell, relief followed, but the thought never fully left. Could it happen again? Scientists debated whether the event was isolated or part of a larger cycle. Some believed Earth regularly passes through clouds of unknown material in space. Others argued the atmosphere filters everything dangerous. Yet the red rain proved something had slipped through. Something survived entry, something endured impact, something remained intact. And perhaps most unsettling of all, nothing in nature had rushed to eliminate it. No immune response, no environmental rejection, just quiet coexistence. That suggested a possibility no one wanted to say out loud. Maybe Earth wasn't rejecting it, because it recognized it. Years later, researchers revisited the data. Not because new evidence appeared, but because old explanations no longer satisfied. The particles found in the rain did not decay. They did not mutate. They did not react the way biological material usually does. Time passed. Seasons changed. Yet samples stored away remained exactly the same. No aging. No breakdown. No adaptation. That alone disturbed some scientists more than any alien theory ever could. Biology depends on change. This did not. A few independent researchers suggested a radical idea, that the particles weren't alive in the traditional sense, but were structured like life, organized, intentional, as if designed to endure transit, survive extremes, and wait. Wait for what? No one could say. Funding for further research quietly dried up. Papers were delayed. Requests went unanswered. Conversations shifted away from conclusions and toward safer interpretations. Meteor dust, rare algae, contaminated samples. Explanations that sounded reasonable but didn't quite fit. Meanwhile, similar reports began surfacing elsewhere. Colored rain in parts of Europe, black rain in Australia, yellow rain in Southeast Asia. Each dismissed individually, each forgotten quickly. But taken together, they formed a pattern, not frequent enough to alarm the public, not rare enough to be coincidence. Something enters our atmosphere occasionally, and when it does, it leaves traces. Most people never notice. Some do. Those who do tend to remember the sky that day, more than the rain itself. The color, the silence, the feeling that something had crossed a boundary, and we were never meant to see it happen. One final detail rarely mentioned in public discussions is who first noticed the anomaly. It wasn't a lab. It wasn't a university. It was ordinary people standing outside, looking up, confused. Many reported the same strange reaction before anyone explained what the rain was. A moment of hesitation, an instinct to step back, as if the body sensed something before the mind could process it. Animals reacted too. Dogs refused to go outside. Birds fell silent. Livestock grew restless, not panicked, just uneasy. That detail was dismissed quickly, hard to measure, impossible to quantify. But humans have relied on instincts long before instruments existed, and sometimes instincts notice patterns before data does. When atmospheric scientists modeled possible sources years later, the math pointed somewhere uncomfortable. Not nearby, not regional, not even planetary. The trajectory suggested an origin beyond Earth's orbit, entering at an angle inconsistent with normal meteor debris. Meaning whatever it wasn't falling accidentally. It was arriving. No announcement followed. No press release, just silence and archived reports. Because once you suggest that something can travel vast distances, remain intact, survive atmospheric entry, and appear selectively, you open questions no one is ready to answer. Questions about intention, questions about surveillance, questions about how long it's been happening, unnoticed, and whether the red rain was an exception, or a glimpse of a process far older and far larger than us. Years after the rain stopped, the samples didn't disappear. They were quietly re-examined again and again. As technology improved, what once looked like biological debris became something harder to define. The structures showed complexity, but not randomness. They weren't damaged by radiation. They weren't broken down by acids. They didn't degrade like anything alive on Earth should. One lab described them as cell, then crossed the word out. Because cells divide, these didn't. They endured. Heat didn't destroy them. Pressure didn't crush them. Time didn't erase them. It was as if they were designed to survive transit, not grow, not evolve, just persist. That raised an uncomfortable possibility. If they weren't living organisms, then what were they carrying? Some researchers proposed a theory that never made headlines. A theory suggesting the particles weren't life, but containers, microscopic vessels, not built to reproduce, built to deliver. Deliver what was never specified. Because the moment you suggest delivery, you imply sender. And once you imply a sender, you imply intent. That's where funding stopped. Papers stalled. Emails went unanswered, not because the idea was disproven, but because it couldn't be safely explored. One scientist later admitted, off record, the evidence wasn't weak, the consequences were. The rain didn't repeat. Not in that place. Not in that way. Which may be the most unsettling part. Because if it were a random event, probability suggests it should have happened again, somewhere. Instead, it behaved like a test. A single release, observed, measured, and never repeated, leaving behind a question that still hangs in the air. Was the red rain an accident? Or a trial run? Decades have passed, yet Kottayam remembers. The town that experienced red rain still talks about it. Quietly, reverently, as if discussing something sacred. Children grow up with the story. Tourists come to see where the sky once bled. Scientists check in, some cautiously, some out of curiosity, others to remind themselves how little we understand. Even now, the spores sit in laboratories and frozen, sealed, catalogued, studied, and still unexplained. They remain a reminder that the universe is far stranger than we think. Books have been written, documentaries filmed. The internet buzzes with speculation, and from space origins to secret experiments. Some claim the rain was a warning, others a message, others still simply nature playing a trick we cannot yet comprehend. Every time clouds gather over southern India, some people look up, wondering, expecting, fearing. The red rain may not fall again, yet the memory lingers, a symbol of nature's power, of life beyond comprehension, and the fragility of human understanding. Perhaps the most important lesson is simple. The world is not entirely ours. It may never be. And sometimes, the sky reminds us of that truth. In the most vivid way imaginable, the rain ended, the fear remained, the mystery endures, and as long as humans look up, as long as we question, the story of the red rain will continue, whispering its secrets to those willing to notice.